what were those two people doing when they got shot? They were at a coalition of Christians and Muslims and Jews trying to figure out how to get aid into Gaza. That's what they were doing there that night. It was a big gala and they gathered a lot of people. And the idea was that you could do it at the Jewish Museum in DC. So it was being spearheaded by Jews to get humanitarian aid into Gaza.
I'm against the policies, and there is a difference between Jews and the state of Israel. Yes, there lives Jews in state of Israel, but the policies of Israel does not represent Jews as a whole, right? Just like Saudi Arabia's policy does not represent all the Muslims in the world. Similarly, the policies of Israel does not represent all the Jews.
But the leftist revolutionaries take this and turn them into these slogans which become mainstream, which make everybody more defensive and polarized. So when people are chanting, from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free, that is talking about the erasure of the state of Israel.
That's insane.
Islam will continue to be triumphant until there have been 12 Khulafa, all of them from Al-Quraysh.
The God of heaven will set up a kingdom that shall never be destroyed. Nor shall the kingdom be left to another people. It shall break in pieces all these kingdoms and bring them to an end, and it shall stand forever.
This is my brother, my executor, and my successor among you, so listen to him and obey.
My kingdom is not of this world. If my kingdom were of this world, my servants would have been fighting.
Whoso obeys me obeys God. Whoever disobeys me disobeys God. Whoever disobeys my commander disobeys me.
The Lord said to me, You are my son. Today I have begotten you. Ask of me, and I will make the nations your heritage, and the ends of the earth your possession.
Two systems of government, two visions for life on earth. Whichever is true changes everything. This is Christ and Khulafa.
Hey guys, welcome back to Christ and Caliphate. Today we are going to be talking about two murders that just happened in Washington, D.C. and the implications for the wider conflict between Israel and Gaza. So let's start by talking about this couple that died in Washington, D.C. last night. So I've heard some people on X saying that these two individuals are made up and no one's even died. What do you say to that?
I mean, I've also seen like memes that start talking about like false flags and stuff like that. And that stuff always drives me crazy. They are real people. I know people who went to their Messianic Jews, so they go to like a Messianic synagogue in Jerusalem. I have a feeling I know which one it is, but I don't want to get it wrong, so I won't say it. And they were all friends with them, you know. Some of them grew up with like the guy. His name's Yaron, and he was gonna propose to his girlfriend. Like everybody knew about it. He bought the ring this week. He was gonna take it. He was gonna propose to her when they went back to Jerusalem. So they definitely are real people, and I know people who have known, particularly the guy, since he was a child.
Yeah, and the killer, what reports that are floating around is like they chanted "Free Palestine," and I don't know how you're gonna free Palestine by just killing two people who have some links to Israel, right? It's how in practicality, it's like tit for tat. Is it that's what you're doing? That's what you're getting. I don't understand like how you can eliminate or get rid of violence by doing more violence.
So here's the breakdown of his name was, I believe it's Elias Rodriguez.
Yeah,
it's Spanish.
He's a
Hispanic.
He's a Hispanic guy. There's no evidence of him being like Muslim, but there's lots of evidence of him being a leftist, basically.
right.
So this guy is a leftist guy from Chicago who has a history of protesting Israel even before October 7th, but has also protested the Amazon headquarters that was coming to Chicago as well. So this guy has a very specific angle on this, and his reading list is Mao. Now, again, a lot of people are saying this is a false flag operation, and I will remind you guys that people said the exact same thing about October 7th when that happened as well.
They did.
They said about 9/11. They said about
Right.
so many things. So
Right.
conspiracy theories always exist. So
Yeah.
it's just far from reality.
I mean, and I just to add on that, like, I think that's how trapped are you in your own narrative when, you might as well just come out and say the earth is flat, right? Like, these people get trapped in their own narrative, and they're so devoted to their own narrative that if an event or a fact happens outside of that narrative, right, their frame of reference, they automatically have to rush to deny it to, sustain their narrative, right? It's the only way to keep their narrative alive is to go, well, it's a false flag, right?
Yeah, and I think the idea is embedded in polarization, right? We are so much polarized in our thinking or in our sources that we don't want to look at other sources. How we denounce or how we ignore those sources and say, no, this is a propaganda. This is a propaganda by opposition, right? So I think in the world of too much information, right, it is really, really hard to pinpoint where the exact true things lie. But at the same time, some things are factual. Looking from the naked eye, you can clearly see that what it is. And this murder is a cold-blooded murder, and it should be condemned at any level, even though even someone who is in favor of Palestine should be condemning this. It's against humanity.
So what people are going to argue in this setting is that Mossad has a long history of shady assassinations to affect politics. And like, while that's true, like, there's an amazing book called Rise and Kill First about this, and Mossad is certainly very good at things like that.
Mossad is intelligence.
Israeli intelligence.
Which agency is not doing that? Tell me.
Right. This is what intelligence agencies are. But Jews generally are exceptional at whatever they do, and including assassinating people as well. But the thing with this is this assassinating their own citizens to provoke some sort of political sympathy doesn't make sense on a number of levels, but it's ignoring the much simpler answer in all this. And the simple answer is that myriads of people are calling for violence right now. Everywhere on X, I'm seeing people post a caption that says, "I am for military intervention against Israel."
Yeah.
Right. Everyone, that's spreading widely right now. That's widely circulating. People saying the way to end the Israel-Gaza conflict is by nations coming together and having a military campaign against Israel. That's what a lot of people are advocating for right now. On top of that, you also get this idea floating around that because Israel is a country with national service, every single Israeli is a combatant. And so the idea is, or if you serve with the IDF at one time in your life, therefore you're not a civilian.
Great.
You're a combatant, right?
Now do Turkey.
Right.
Right. Now do any of the other
South Korea,
right? Yeah. Now do those countries.
But that is a absolutist leftist revolutionary mindset,
right?
Because basically in all civilizations and cultures, basically all of them, you've always had a differentiation between a soldier on the battlefield and, say, a prisoner of war.
Right.
And certainly there's a long tradition of respecting messengers and ambassadors.
Sure.
So when King Leonidas kicks the
just
messenger
thinking
into
about
the well, right?
This is Sparta.
No man, Greek or Persian, never threatens a messenger.
Right.
Because that in their culture is something that's like an outrageous thing
Sure.
to do.
Sure.
David,
Well, no, attacking the messenger is essentially a barbarian thing. Like if you remember the opening scene of the Gladiator movie, the original,
yes.
right? They send the messenger back headless, tied to the horse.
So and then there's a precedent biblically where David has Joab killed. Spoilers for House of David season 7, because what does he accuse him of? What did Joab do that deserved to die? Avenging in a time of peace acts done in war.
Right.
There's one of the rules of warfare is you keep things, on the battleground, and people may respond to this by saying, well, Israel is not keeping a good line between combatants and civilians. Look at the journalists and whatever. Grant that to them. That doesn't make this good. It a bad thing happening doesn't justify this other bad thing that's being done.
I think this is the the intersection of leftist revolutionary tactics and being inserted into perpetual conflict in the Middle East, right? Like the guy who killed them was a leftist, right? Like, obviously a Marxist in a lot of ways. And, the point is not to liberate Palestine, I think, at this point. Like, it's not. The point now is to, have a cultural and political revolution that will, get rid of the state of Israel, right?
No, I think,
And all other states.
And all other states, right?
Yeah.
So it's not just Israel. I'm not just focusing on Israel, because if the Marxists had their way, and hear me out on this, they would overthrow every country in the world.
Right. They want
Right?
a stateless
Like,
society.
I remember when I worked at Princeton University, there was like a dorm room I walked into. We used to paint the dorm rooms when they were done. And I walked in, and this kid had like a big banner, and it was a picture of Mao, right? And Mao's face was shining like the sun. And all of the different cultures of the world were looking up and essentially like, in adoration, worship, or whatever of Mao. And that is the communist idea, right? Like that, maybe take Mao out, you know what I mean? But it's the idea that the state or whatever that embodies is the thing that needs to be, it replaces your culture, right? It takes your culture and supersedes it. It takes your national interests and supersede it. So I think a lot of the same people who are running around saying like false flag, false flag, false flag are people who are like, freaked out by like, one world government and all this other stuff. And I seen this, different memes that were like the Rothschild, and the Bilderbergers are in on, the conflict in Israel, and, Israel's manipulating the world and all of this other stuff. And I mean, all of that is just, it's my favorite word to this stuff that's like safe for podcasts is poppycock, right? It's absolute nonsense, because, the idea that one state, right, is capable of manipulating the entire world is impossible. I just, you know what, like maybe you're so embedded into every culture in the world, right, that you can do that. But the problem is that nobody likes you. So if you're trying to manipulate the entire world, like what, you didn't gain anything. Nothing was gained. Everybody hates you, right? And then moments like this and wars like this totally point out this idea that it's like, if you were truly manipulating the entire world, right? And let's just take Israel out of it. Let's just say it was Pakistan, right? Let's just say it was the Brits. Let's say it was the Turks. The mass effect of that has to be that you're actually like safe in your homeland, or you're in control of something, right? And I just don't see it. I mean, people will look at the Jews and say the Jews run Hollywood, and the Jews like own the banks and all this other stuff. They've been successful in a lot of different genres, to no doubt, right? Like, but the truth is, I'm not really sure anyone runs anything. As a Christian, I know that this world is run by the Prince of Power of the Air, right? Like this is his domain, So when you start hearing things like that, like, you know, they're absolute statements. It's all or none. You know what I mean? They definitely rule the world. You know, they definitely rule Hollywood. Sure. I mean, they joke about it. You know, there are a lot of Jews in
Yeah, I
Hollywood.
feel like lobbying is one thing we know that how backdoor lobbying works, right, in United States. And United States is a superpower, right? When we say United States have influence over many, many countries in the world, right?
Sure.
Can dictate terms. So, and Israel is a frontline ally, and especially with the Donald Trump in office, Israel has very support. And so when some people went going back to your point, like Israel is involved across the globe and stuff. So I think it is not a direct involvement, but it is involvement through United States, right? So I think there is some reality, but how some of the countries see it, particularly Muslims, it's complete absurd. I would say that.
Israel is a country that uses influence well, you know, as would Qatar, as would Saudi Arabia.
Yes.
They act like any other country does. They're acting in their own self-interests.
Yeah.
And sometimes when countries act in their self-interests, they do immoral things to get there.
Exactly.
But and Israel is like that because they're uniquely evil. No, because they're like everybody else. That's the reality, right? Israelis, Jews are just like everybody else. And the framework that's allowing this kind of thing to happen is a belief system which thinks we are the good guys, we are righteous. They out there somewhere, they are the bad guys and they're not like us.
And there is an element of superiority as well. That's my point. You may disagree with me, but I think given that the war of Gaza, which is our next section, I guess, and we're going to talk more about it, but in general, if to wrap this up, I would say yes, there is a sense of to connect those dots. I would say this killing has some links to what's going on in Gaza.
Yeah, they have that. Again, there is a sense of superiority there, like everyone else.
I mean, not everyone else.
Not everyone else, but a lot of other people.
Yes. I mean, I would say Arabs consider non-Arabs inferior to them, but not in a way. Of course, when it comes to war, I think Arabs would be more cruel than Israelis, but it has not come to that point that we can see that. Anyways.
So one interesting note here. Did you guys see Kanye West's reaction to this?
Not yet. I saw somebody, like people posting about it, but I was driving and
So Kanye West's reaction is, I'm done with anti-Semitism. I love all people. I'm sorry for the hurt I've caused.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, which version of are we getting Kanye on the up cycle of his psychosis or the down cycle? Is this like Kim is still with me, Kanye, or is this like?
Yeah, so let's be praying for that guy. It's easy to laugh at him.
Yeah,
and we shouldn't be mocking him, nor should we be getting our ideas from him.
That album that he put out, the Christian album that he put out, was fire. Right, to use a Gen Z or millennial word or whatever, that album was fire. I love that album. But then Kanye's Kanye. Kanye gonna be Kanye, right?
So things seem to be moving a mile a minute in the Israel-Gaza conflict right now. What are the pieces on the chessboard right now?
You go first.
No,
because I have a lot of things to say. I have a lot.
We're probably not gonna find a lot of agreement on some stuff.
I'll go first.
Okay.
The lay of the land is that you have England, France, and someone else have just basically
Canada
have basically now said Israel needs to not do this new offensive. They need to start letting aid into Gaza, otherwise they're going to sort of like cancel all trade talks. So they're putting pressure on Israel. There's rumors about America doing stuff, but nothing's really materialized. But then on the flip side of this, Mahmoud Abbas, the president of the Palestinian Authority, is now telling Hamas to lay down their weapons and surrender their territory to the Palestinian Authority. So it's an interesting...
That is very interesting. I was not aware of that.
Yeah, and then Israel is on the verge of sending in a new wave of soldiers with the idea of this time of taking and holding territory in Gaza.
Yeah. I mean, I think after a certain point that, from a strategic standpoint, the idea of the past wars like 67, 48, 72, when they have to make incursions into those territories, they have to hold them or they suffer later on down the road, right? Like particularly in 68 and 72 when they took the Golan Heights. Syrians were just like lining rockets up on the Golan Heights. I've been there. It's a clear shot. All you have to do is just stand on the, put all your artillery on the top of it and you can just reach for miles from there. So, strategically speaking, right? And I mean, again, we talked in the last segment about like what every nation does. Not every nation faces what they face, I would say, right? But there isn't a nation in the world right now, particularly in this heightened climate of conflict, that would say, I'm going to give away ground that is strategic to my survival. Like that's just bad warfare. But regardless of that, that's not taking the human element of it into it. It's not like looking at it from any standpoint other than a military standpoint.
Like honestly, my take on this is unpopular. Is that they should have taken and held it immediately. Like the bombing, carpet bombing it in the first place was like short sighted.
Yeah.
And now they're trying to do what they probably should have done in the first place, right?
I can be honest with you, I don't think they ever should have let it go. I now looking at it in hindsight, like letting it, become what it became. It was unpopular when it happened, right? Like, a lot of people in Israel didn't want to do it. Ariel Sharon was like hell bent on doing it though. And then he had a stroke right after it happened. So he wasn't able to sit there. It's a lot like Lincoln getting shot, I mean, I'm not comparing the two, but politically speaking, it's a lot like Lincoln getting shot, right after right as Reconstruction is starting. So the idea of being able to like shepherd the process through the person who was like had the plan happen, and then his right hand man took over, Ehud Olmert, and he eventually was like found guilty of corruption, and they put him in prison. So, the process I feel like was doomed from the start, and I don't think it gave anybody like the ability to actually succeed. That's, so as far as holding it militarily, I mean, you could go back to 2000, what was it, 2009, 2008, and say, well, I guess that was a bad idea.
I think there are two things. I would make a detailed comment on it. And first, I want to put myself clear that I'm not anti-Semitic. I should not be arrested for that because there's a lot of. But I am.
Bro, if they touch your visa, I'm going after them. Okay.
I'm against the policies, and there is a difference between Jews and the state of Israel. Yes, there lives Jews in state of Israel, but the policies of Israel does not represent Jews as a whole, right? Just like Saudi Arabia's policy does not represent all the Muslims in the world. Similarly, the policies of Israel does not represent all the Jews. And killing of two-person, I think when people say, even the vice president said it's an anti-Semitic. So I think it is less anti-Semitic than, again, it is just like killing two officials from Saudi Arabia and calling it anti-Islamophobic, right? So I don't understand that idea why everything that is related to Israel is always associated with Judaism or anti-Semitism. That is, I think, a fallacy. That's not logically correct. Point number two, explain me what is genocide. Explain me a definition of genocide here. In my opinion, what genocide is, what I read, and of course I'm gonna ask your point on what genocide is, that killing of people, without any measures, and killing it in large number and targeting a particular minority in that regard, right? So these all are the massacre and also sort of those things.
Yeah,
are a definition of genocide.
So I do not think this is a genocide. The reason people throw genocide around here is because people who throw around the word genocide are not looking to solve the problem. They're looking to start a war.
No, I mean, like, I am not looking to start.
I know. But the way people are using this word, so genocide is the attempt to wipe out an entire ethnic group, right? So there's Arab Israelis who are part of the same ethnic group who are not currently being persecuted by the state of Israel. But
and they have voting rights and places in
no,
government.
what and you know, in Ramallah things are like things are generally okay, right? There's parts of the West Bank which are bad too, but so again, I understand the impulse there, and I think a lot of people are worried that's the direction it's going in. But the reality of what's happening here is it is a siege. And this is what happened, and people haven't seen a siege for like 100 years at this point, so we're unused to it. And sieges are awful. Sieges are trapping military populations with civilian populations and causing devastation to the civilian population and starvation to people in an attempt to get a military to surrender, right? That is what this is.
I mean, that's how the Union beat the Confederates. There were the final, the final battle was essentially a siege. They were out of soldiers. They were starving to death, and they eventually had to be brought to the point where they would come to the table and surrender. So,
Yeah, I think the past should not justify the present as we are progressive and we're going forward, right? So my point again, I was going to go back to what I was saying about the genocide. I wanted to emphasize on the grave importance of what's going on, and not to say that I support any kind of military intervention for Israel. I support Israel right to existence, and that's for sure. So does Palestine. So my general take is that there should be
do they?
two-state solution. I'm not sure about who wants it and who doesn't want it,
Right.
how many Israelis and how many Palestinians. But generally, I think what is happening is the state of Israel. Again, I'm saying state of Israel. I'm not saying Jews. I'm saying state of Israel is doing more than on above and beyond scale of destruction and killing of innocent people, and innocent people include children and civilians. And we talked about killing of two people and we made a big deal about it. It clearly shows that, okay, either world care less about Arabs or Gazans or people because they are less human than us or less human than people living in United States. That kind of like gives me really, really bad feelings that, okay, if we came all the way from the past, learning from the past that no, everyone is equal, then seeing this clearly dictates that there is some kind of difference in how we deal with it.
I would disagree with that because there are, again, the way people view things is the way people view things, right?
Mhm.
Like, if you were in Australia, there are people who in Australia who look down on the Aborigines, right? There are people in New Zealand who look down on the Maori. Like there are people in everywhere who like Afghanistan, right? Like if you're a Hazara,
Maori represent.
right? Oh yeah, this is the way. But
He breaks the secret.
I know, right? Come on, man. The idea is that, I think that the point is not that like people in the West look down at Arabs. I think people are confused because I think what a Jew is. A Jew is somebody who's born ethnically Jewish,
Yeah.
right? Totally. Somebody, or maybe depending on your view of Judaism, like converts to Judaism. But when it comes to Muslims, like the diversity within 1 billion people, right, is very complex. And then on top of that, right now, you have the people who are making all the headlines in Islam are jihadis. Like, think about it. Okay, fine, MBS and, Trump get together and everything else like that. But what has dominated the headlines from the West's perspective, right? It's like, 10 years ago in America, it was like creeping Sharia, right? In Europe, it's like, look at what's happening in London, look at what's happening in all of these different countries. So I think that people are more like, I don't think that they hate Arabs. I think that they just don't know, like they're lumping them all in together, which is exactly what you shouldn't do. That's how you get anti-Semitism. That's how you get Islamophobia. Like when you start taking this sweeping thing and defining a whole group of people, and I could easily say, listen, the government of Turkey is not HTS. The Turkish people, they're separate. You know what I mean? But in a way, people get elected to places and they do things. I mean, it's obvious that the actions of the Israeli government, which I'm not defending, right? I don't have a dog in the fight. If they decide they want to stop fighting tomorrow, I don't have a dog in the fight. My thing is, if you're going to take like a hostile warlike position, you can't say that they happen in a vacuum. So the reason why the state of Israel is in the flux that it's in is not because of Arabs. It's not particularly because of just like your average Muslim, like my mother, people's parents, the many, many Muslims that we deal with at the Al-Maida Initiative. The problem is that if you can't look at this cancer within Islam and say that there is this cancer within Islam that is spreading so rapidly and unchecked that it's infecting and tainting the way that the whole world looks at Islam. So, I think that's my 2 cents.
What I would say is that I do not think there is some secret Israeli government plan to destroy all Palestinians. I think there are people that would really, really like to do that. And there are some hardline Israeli settlers who have undue influence in Israel that want that.
And that answers his question of being moles in every religion, right? The people who promote extremism. Islam get more headlines because the numbers are more.
Yeah.
People have that ideology, but that type of mindset exists in Christianity and Judaism as well.
And so Israel needs to deal with those people better than it's dealing with those people. It needs to take, not just as a government, as a culture, they need to take better measures against dealing with those people.
The thing is that nobody likes them there.
Yeah.
They just right now, managed to cobble together some political support. And then on top of that, October 7th made everybody just double down on what was existing.
So listen, if there's going to be peace in the region, both sides need to do their very best to jettison themselves from their own crazies.
Extremes, yeah.
And so with the Palestinians, on the one hand, it's Hamas. Honestly, on the bigger side, it's the leftist revolutionaries who are outside of the country right now.
Right.
Because
I think that this entire thing probably would have been over.
Yeah.
Had it not been for leftist intervention. I think that they would have gone back to a ceasefire.
Yeah, leftists, when we say leftists, yes, there is Marxist ideology.
Yeah.
But I think bigger chunk is driven in humanity and the loss of humanity. And what people like me are concerned about is the loss of lots and lots of human lives.
Yeah, see, okay,
right?
That's what I'm saying.
Sure, and you should be concerned about that.
Yes.
But if somebody comes into my house, I'm not stopping until my children are safe.
Yeah, but like how far you can go. I mean, like
here's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
Here's what I'm saying.
neighbor.
The leftist revolutionaries are very good at dealing with genuine problems. So I would say the way that Israel has dealt with the civilians is a genuine problem that's a lot more complex than this is some evil conspiracy theory.
Mhm.
Right.
Or
right. The solutions to this are much more boring. But the leftist revolutionaries take this and turn them into these slogans which become mainstream, which make everybody more defensive and polarized. So when people are chanting from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free, that is talking about the erasure of the state of Israel.
That's insane. That's
right. And
weird.
and a lot of the public voices really do want that, and they're calling for that. And all that's going to do is make the Israelis dig in their heels further.
right.
And also there is on the opposite side, there I heard many people that they want to have a greater Israel. They want to throw all Arabs in. I heard Mother Israel. There is a lady making headlines. It's like, okay, there is Africa. There is other Muslim countries. Saudi Arabia is so big. Why they cannot take Israelis? So there is a mindset. Okay, this land belongs to Jews, and Israelis and Jews only, and everybody else should leave. Arabs should leave. This is also not a practical solution.
No, and it's getting worse, right? Both these
Yes.
sides are getting worse the longer this goes on.
Yeah.
So
Well, I mean, again, that's not the majority of people even in Israel,
but
like
those voices are
but
loud.
again, they're the ones that like, if you want to look at a pariah, right? The pariah could be, the way that the media has handled this, right? Like amplifying those voices, trying to, they're acting not in the interests of people. Media used to like function as a watchdog, right? Media would try to like hold, the press would try to hold power, speak truth to power, right?
Right.
But now it's not like that.
It's propaganda.
Now it's all propaganda, and it's all driven by ratings. And
Agenda
let's
driven.
put the most incendiary people across from each other, and let's elevate their voices. And your average thing is like, listen, I know Israelis, I know Palestinians. I don't. The ones that I know, none of them think that this is good. Right? None of them think that this is a good idea.
And so this is why this kind of like loaded language bothers me, right? Because before the war, Gaza was a concentration camp.
Yeah.
And
I was there in 2016.
and now it's a concentration camp. And like the amount of headlines I've seen about there are now no longer any hospitals in Gaza, for example.
Yeah, BBC reported that.
Yeah, but I've had it reported like 15 times at this point.
I don't believe that.
And here's the thing. There are things. It's the truth is bad in Gaza, but it's much more complicated than. So, for example, right, I've been hearing that no aid has been allowed in up until today. I got an email from the U.S. State Department this morning, giving me a mechanism for getting food to people I know in Gaza that's been operational for more than a month.
Yeah.
And we'll include the link in the show description. So if you have anyone in Gaza you want to get food to, we have an actual mechanism.
Yeah, it's like the point was limited aid. They were limited. And of course, they have their own precautions. And again, there is a lot of complexity. And as you mentioned, that's complex. But complexity, in my opinion, does not allow you to give you a free hand to do whatever you want. And then last comment, please allow me to say that when you talked about Arab citizens of State of Israel, I do not know a lot, but I know few of them, and what their point of view about them as being citizens, they face a lot of hate. They face a lot of discrimination, and they are, in many, many cases, treated as a second-class citizens.
Again,
okay, that has not been my experience.
But even if that's true,
Arab Israelis,
even if that's true, right? That's a bad situation. It's not the same as genocide, right?
Right.
So what I'm saying here is that the complexity of the situation does not give people a free rein to do whatever they want, but the fact is both sides want to oversimplify the situation, and that is bad for everybody.
Right.
And oversimplifying things is fuel to the continued fires of war.
And I just want to put this out there. If you really want to know who the most hated group in Israel are, they're Messianic Jews. Everybody hates them. The Israelis hate them. The Arabs hate them. Everybody hates them.
I actually wonder if
they are also like the ones that are most likely to have their cases dismissed by the Supreme Court of Israel and all this other stuff. So, I know Israelis, Israeli Jews who have married, that have married Arabs there, like they're in a completely like racist society. There's racism everywhere, like it's racism. There's racism here, but 30 years ago, right? If a black guy married a white girl, everybody was gonna like give them the
look.
eye, right? The look, like, oh my gosh, she married a black guy, like all that other stuff. So, I think that what's happening is, that comes along with globalization and all this other stuff is, we all have the internet now. None of us are stupid. Right? We all know Kanye married a white girl. Like, you know what I mean? Like, we see that these like lines that people have been trying to defend racially are all getting like kind of blurred. They're all getting broken down. That's a good thing, right? If you ask me. But I think that I'm like like there are lots of it. There are lots of Arabs that like what's Nas Daily?
Nas Daily.
Yeah, like sure, you're gonna run into some prejudice, but if you're a Jew and you step outside of Israel, you're gonna run into prejudice, right? So it's like this thing where you look at it and it's happening there, and it's like completely concentrated in this one area right now, right? But let's be honest, nobody looks at Israel and goes, "That's the best place ever," right? And there are very few Muslims who look at Israel and go, "Oh, I want to go there. I want to spend time there. I want to be with. I want to I want to spend time with Jews, and I want to get there." So
The central premise of what
everything has, like every action has an equal and opposite reaction. You see what I'm saying? So when you're like a Jewish country in the middle, surrounded by like Arab countries that all hate you, and then you have Arabs inside your country, right? There's going to be tension.
Or you're in their country. It's like either way you want to.
Either way, right? No, seriously. Well, I mean, right now it's the borders are the state of Israel.
Right.
So, however you want to look at it. But
so again, I think what this all comes down to, and what the situation shows us, right, that we're looking for simple answers to complex problems, and that's generally not how it works. So even with the differentiation between anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism, right? Whether this guy hated Jews or just Israelis, I kind of don't care, since he murdered 2 people.
Yes.
Right. So yeah, sure. So the anti-Zionism is a kind of a different issue in and of itself. And so you've got to pull these problems apart and tackle them kind of one by one in sensible, boring ways, rather than looking for these grand gestures and revolutions.
Yeah, and also saying things that makes audience happy, or
Right.
either side. We were just looking for realistic solutions.
Right.
And those solutions are to be talked in depth, not on a surface level. Okay, tit for tat, that's not the solution.
And I actually feel like that's happening right now with the Gulf countries, with the U.S. government, with even with the Palestinian Authority. Like,
Yeah.
I'm hopeful that might actually.
friend of our podcast, I can't remember. He was a Palestinian guy you had on. He's Realigned Palestine.
Yeah,
I saw he posted some stuff that they found in
Ahmed Fouad Al-Khatib.
Ahmed, right? Yeah, that the Hamas's motivation for doing this attack now was that there was normalization coming with Saudi Arabia, right? And then I have looked, like I've told many people this, but a couple of weeks before the attack, Netanyahu proposed this thing called the Prosperity Zone, and it stretched all the way, like to the left and to the right of Israel and to the north and to the south, and went all the way into the Arab Peninsula. So, the idea that we have to stay in anti-Semitism, right? That we have to stay in Islamophobia, right? Is actually, I think that's the trigger point. That's why people want war. The people who want war want that conflict to stay alive, so that those two things can't happen. And the whole point of that, and again, I'll point at Hamas, right? Like I'll point at this like whole cadre of nations that are state sponsoring terrorists and all this other stuff, and sending weapons to them and keeping this conflict alive, because it can't see like a path forward that doesn't end in some kind of either Islamic or Marxist supremacy, right? Or, I'll even throw the West in there, right? So, let's just say that militarily speaking, and like as far as nations cooperating together, we're like we were not just on the verge of something awesome, I think, right?
Yeah.
We're still on the verge of it. Like, that's the good news that you can get out of it, Like,
Right.
I still think that a good thing can happen out of all of this.
Yeah. And I think just to wrap this section, because we had
Yeah,
a
right.
time, right? It's like, if you look at the past,
Well, you're going to edit it. So.
all the
Ladies
okay.
and gentlemen, our editor.
So all the conflicts that in the past were solved on the table, not on the war.
Yeah.
Right. So if we are looking for a solution to this problem, that has to be on the table. And Middle East is moving one step towards it. As you said, Mahmoud Abbas talked about it. Israel need to show some seriousness about it, and the United States is the mediator. If they come together on the table, fix that. At the end of the day, you don't want innocent people to die on Israeli side, on Palestinian side.
Nobody
You know,
does.
so
Right.
nobody wants it.
And we're all connected to this through degrees of separation, right? You are one degree of separation from the people that were killed. I'm one degree of separation I'm trying to bring out of Gaza right now, right?
Right.
This is not something that's impersonal to us.
No, I mean that's why I talked about it so much. I mean, I think the thing that a lot of people didn't pick up on why what were those two people doing when they got shot? They were at a coalition of Christians and Muslims and Jews trying to figure out how to get aid into Gaza. That's what they were doing there that night. It was a big gala and they gathered a lot of people. And the idea was that you could do it at the Jewish Museum in DC. So it was being spearheaded by Jews to get humanitarian aid into Gaza. And what ruined it? What ruined it? What brought chaos to it? Right? It wasn't a Muslim. It wasn't a Christian. It wasn't a Jew. It was an outside actor being influenced by radical ideology. And I think that's going to be like, if the Middle East, falls apart, that's going to be why.
Yeah. And so basically, there's people in the West, and I'd include Hamas in the East like this, who are revolutionaries who are in love with the idea of the revolution. And if there's peace in the Middle East and there's trade between Israel and Saudi Arabia, and like people in Gaza are sort of generally okay, but don't have a single Palestinian state, they're in love with the idea of revolution, and that idea has to die in order for the world to become a better place.
Yeah.
And people are in love with this idea of revolution, and because basically their cause loses if everything is solved by other
Peace and dialogue.
Peacefully.
Yeah.
Peace and dialogue. Right.
So people who love peace, who want prosperity, who want the general good of the world, have to cut through the propaganda, and they have to find each other. Otherwise, the revolutionaries will dictate the future. Well, guys, thank you for listening to Christ and Caliphate. We'll be back next time.